Although many fantasy and sci-fi series deal with the concept of immortality, I have never seen such a nuanced and interesting look into the topic before watching Frieren Beyond Journey's End. With the main character being an immortal elf, we get a personal look into the life of one who doesn't die. While the desire to live forever has been a part of humanity since forever, Frieren shows that being immortal in a mortal world isn't necessarily a good thing. No matter how much time you have, a life without meaningful connections is dull and empty. The first example of this is in the beginning of the story. Frieren is a distant, closed-off person. To her, a human's life is like an annual flower. What's the point of getting attached to it when in a mere 60, 80 years they'll be gone? 100 years isn't a long time for Frieren, so the 10 years she spent with the hero's adventuring party didn't mean much to her at all. At least, that's what she originally thought. After the party defeated the Demon King, Frieren leaves to collect more spells. Before this, she promised to be back in 50 years to view the next meteor shower in a better location than what they got in the city. The meteor shower is a perfect visual for how Frieren feels about humans at this point. The rocks quickly burning up in the atmosphere are beautiful, but don't last long enough to have any real meaning. Despite this, she still promises to come back and see them again. 50 years later, Frieren returns and does what she promised. Shortly after this, Himmel, the leader of the party, who we learn through later parts of the story had a very special relationship with Frieren, dies. She doesn't show any expression during the funeral, but when burying the casket, Frieren's grief finally overtakes her. However, it's not only grief, but regret. While crying over the loss of her friend, Frieren realizes that she was wrong. The short length of a human's lifespan didn't mean she should be distant and not hold a meaningful connection to them. It was the exact opposite. Because of the short length of human lifespan, she should even more so cherish the time she had with them. This is the first point that Frieren teaches about immortality, and it's a very profound truth about life. Time is limited, not just for you, but also those around you. So enjoy what you get in each moment with those you love. All of this is summed up in the most powerful line Frieren delivers in the first episode. Why didn't I try to get to know him better? This is the most relevant real-life lesson and theme Fern has regarding immortality, but there are many more fascinating ideas on this topic explored through each episode. Many philosophers consider immortality to be bad for you, that you will have no focus for your life because you have infinite time. In this hypothetical concept, there is literally no consequences for procrastination, because you always have tomorrow. The idea that pending death brings urgency and meaning to life is explored in many fantasy and science fiction works, but none of them that I've experienced capture it in the way Frieren has. The interesting way the fantasy genre shows this is through characters with long lifespans that do things very differently than regular mortals. Lord of the Rings has this with elves, and with the very, very, very slow Ents. There is no reason to rush things, because 100 years from now is a blink of an eye to an elf or an ancient tree. In Frieren, we see that because of dedication, patience, and focus, elves will learn mastery, but because of their limited life, humans know efficiency. This leads us to Fern, her introduction being another interesting look into the way Frieren thinks about time. Heiter tricked her into staying with him and his adopted daughter for several years so that Fern could train to be competent enough to protect herself on Frieren's travels. While a few years isn't much time at all for Frieren to spend deciphering an ancient book on the request of a friend, for Fern, it's a deadline. She has to be competent enough to stay with the only person she has any relationship with, and she improves very quickly, becoming a skilled mage and building a relationship with Frieren. Continuing their journey together, Fern creates an urgency for Frieren in each small adventure they have. She is a constant reminder to her master to not get caught up in the endless tasks of life and prioritize what's important. Although she doesn't express this directly, she helps Frieren prioritize her goals instead of getting caught up in minor tasks that leave her regretting not caring more about those around her. This all leads up to the biggest moment where we are shown the most obvious weakness of immortality. During the demon infiltration arc, where Frieren faces down Aura the Guillotine, in one of the most satisfying battles I've ever seen, another fight takes place between Fern and Lugner, one of Aura's subjects. While Lugner is more powerful and has lived much longer, Fern was trained by Frieren specifically to kill demons. But more than that, her victory came from the speed and urgency Fern had to kill him. With the constant volley of attacks attacks from Fern, Lugner decided a battle of attrition was his best strategy. Be defensive and wait for Fern to exhaust her mana. This was a major mistake. Fern had been suppressing her mana specifically to fool the demon, as Frieren had taught her. But even with this reveal, we see the urgency Fern has in her life, as she had to train hard to have this much mana at such a young age. This fight perfectly illustrates the weakness of immortality. In both the battle and in life, Fern has a more focused mindset and is willing to take risks that lead to success. The demon was slow and cautious because he has the possibility of thousands of years ahead of him. However, this is not a show that puts a theme or message above its world and story. Through these concepts, we see that Frieren, beyond Journey's End, never teaches that immortality is a bad thing. The long-living beings of this world never complain about their lifespan. Instead, the message of Frieren is simple, but extremely meaningful and profound. The amount of time isn't as important as the quality of time. For when you face an enemy that has more experience than you can still win. And the 10-year adventure with friends can mean more than the hundreds of years you spent without them. Even if you have all the time in the world, those around you don't. This leads to the aspect that personally hit me the hardest. Nothing felt more real to me in this anime than its portrayal of dealing with distant loss. And that is for the last part of this video series. If it's already out, it's here on the end screen, and part 1 is the other video here. If you enjoy my content, hit the join button after you subscribe to see what bonus perks you can get. That's all from me, Jamio.